Oh, reconnection successful. Okay.
All right.
All right. I think we are back. Sorry about that. We had a glitch in the
glitch in the
system. Okay, so just everybody let us know if we're back. No need to panic. Boy, I'm really sorry about that, guys. Okay, just let us know if we're back. Otherwise, I'm going to continue on. This quote that we just talked about is so awesome because, as I was saying before, we haven't been through a ton of storms at sea. We've only really been in one situation on our boat that was even like somewhat like difficult or scary, I'd say. But to me, this is so interesting. The fact that they say that storms are essentially, the fact that everything is up to you. You know what I mean? You're on your own, and it's only you that you can depend on. Like, that is the core of the worst and the best aspects of being out at sea. I think that's such an interesting point, and so that's a really cool light to look at storms in, because in a lot of ways storms are that, the worst side of it, and then, pleasant sailing offshore and that feeling of discovery and adventure is the best side of it, and they're both connected in the same way, and that is that you're on your own. So anyway, I thought that was a really cool way to kind of like bring that in to to shed light on that.
Yeah, and I would also say you do experience some extreme emotional highs from the fact that you're kind of forced to be self-sufficient. So when you do handle a problem on your own, you get this like enormous feeling of gratification that is hard to get in other places. So yeah, so we wanted to talk about storms today because most of the time when we tell people we're sailing around the world in our little 30-foot boat, the first question they have is, what about storms at sea? And to be honest, when we first started cruising, it was a big fear in both of our minds as well. But something that we've learned is that there's always resources out there for every aspect of cruising, and you can learn so much from the predecessors, from our predecessors, people who've been sailing their whole lives, just like Lin Pardey. So she has over 200,000 miles of sailing under her belt, so that's why we wanted to talk today about her preferable storm tactics. Yeah. Cool.
And we do want to just say that we're not going to be specifically talking about all the different tactics that you could employ in a storm situation. This isn't going to be an all-inclusive discussion about storm tactics. What we want to do, because we've got Lynn here, we've got a lot of her, really awesome advice from the videos that she sent us. We're going to be talking specifically about the Pardey strategy of storm tactics, and then we'll do live streams in the future of maybe some different styles that other people advocate.
Mm-hmm. And real quick, Sailing Rainbow says, I'd love to hear about heaving to for riding out storms. What technique has worked best? And we will definitely get to that, so stick around.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. So, first question.
First question is, we understand that there's a difference between a scary and a dangerous experience. Looking back at your sailing career, what was your scariest experience when you've been out at sea in a storm? And what was the most dangerous experience?
Okay, let's see what Lynn had to say.
Hi, Desiree. Hi, Jordan. Thanks for the opportunity to be with you by video link. Well, interesting thing I've learned through my years of voyaging, in fact, years of adventuring, is that the actual management of storms at sea is rarely scary if you have prepared, if you've had some experience of getting out in heavier winds before you set sail, and if you have a plan and the gear is ready to go. What actually was the most scary thing for me was the anticipation of a storm. Not just what would I do the first time I was in a storm, but I remember in the Indian Ocean, we had warning that there was a cyclone approaching, although we'd chosen the best possible time to cross the Indian Ocean between Sri Lanka and Malaysia. An unusual storm came through, and for 3 days we were getting the signs that a cyclone was approaching. First, the barometer started to drop, then unusual currents started to develop, and although the sailing was somewhat pleasant, we started getting a very large underlying swell. 3 days before we actually got into the storm. And those 3 days of anticipating, of worrying about what we were going to do, could we avoid it, how bad it was going to be, that was actually the scariest part. When the storm actually hit, and it hit on my watch, we were sailing in about 12 knots of nice beam reach, and then on watch I noticed a very big squall line approaching, and by the time I got my foul weather gear on, I didn't have time to wake Larry. I got up on deck. I just handled it. We'd practiced. We'd been in storms before. I had the gear ready to go. Larry heard the commotion. He felt the boat, of course, heeling drastically as I was reducing sail. He came out on deck and helped. The scariness was over. It was the anticipation. So all I can say is to avoid being scared by storms, get out in ever heavier winds, check your gear, be prepared. What was the most dangerous? I would say that was off the coast of Australia. We describe it quite carefully in the latest edition of Storm Tactics Handbook. And what made that dangerous is that we had very little room. We depended completely on the parachute anchor to stop our drift to leeward into the Coral Sea and the Great Barrier Reef area. There was only 70 to 80 miles of leeway. That was probably the most dangerous. The para anchor did the job. We didn't have major problems with the leeway. We only lost a small amount of leeway in 2.5 days in 60, gusting 85. So that was probably the most dangerous.
All right. Well, awesome answer. And I know, Desiree and I cannot, don't have any anecdotes like Lin does at all. But what I can say personally is that I know in our experience, like with the little amount of cruising that we've done, we have been scared a couple of times. And mostly because of that aspect that you don't know what to expect. And in fact, like for us, like when we were first experiencing like tumultuous situations out at sea, like we didn't even really know what to be concerned about. So our expectations of what might happen, what bad stuff might happen, were totally unrealistic. So I don't know what I was concerned about, that like the boat might just break up or something. And so going through a couple of situations, like we've started to realize simple things, just like, your tactics are all about keeping the boat pointing in the right direction, relative to the wind and the seas, and controlling your speed, and if you can do those two things as well as control the loads on your rig and everything else, then you're doing all right. So.
And Lin goes into this a little bit, but I can't stress enough how, if you're not living on a boat and you've never cruised before, the anticipation or the fear of this like unknown idea of storms, it's like you can read a book like Storm Tactics and it is awesome because like, Lin portrays her feelings everywhere from like, like what it sounds like when things are like crashing through the cabin and everything. But you don't know what it feels like personally until you're out there and actually doing it. And so I remember for me, what was most surprising when Jordan was talking about, controlling the speed of the boat and controlling the direction of the boat, I was shocked the first time we heaved to, because it was almost like there was like a scene change. So we just changed something on our boat and everything felt completely different, and it felt like it wasn't like this big crazy catastrophic event anymore. And it was crazy to me that you can actually control those feelings. So yeah, that's kind of what I've learned from our like short experience sailing in kind of bad weather. And questions for you guys out there is, do you have any questions for Lin on this topic? And also, what was your scariest experience in a storm, and why do you think that was?
And also, I will say, I know we're kind of cutting in and out, guys. I really apologize about that. In fact, I think we might be cutting out right now as I speak. But we're just going to kind of keep trucking along. It seems like the internet's really just going up and down right now. So if you guys can kind of just bear with us on that, hopefully that problem will get better. But That's Mexico for you, you know. But are we not live right now?
Not live, yeah. We could try to go upstairs. I don't know why it would make a difference, but
Yeah, I don't.
darn it.
Okay, I think we're back. So, man, this internet is just going crazy right now.
Darn it. Oh yes, we are live.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we're back, guys. So just bear with us. The internet is just bouncing all over the place right now.
Yeah.
But Lin Pardey is still on the chat. So if you have any questions for her, just direct your questions for her. She can't be here for the entire live stream. So if you have any questions for her, go ahead and ask her. She's way more interesting than we are. And we're just gonna kind of keep cruising through these issues with the internet.
And so Aaron asks, did you prefer a para anchor over a Jordan Series drogue, purely due to how long it takes to sew up all of those damn cones? I am building a Series drogue now, and it is a monotonous, boring job. And we will get to that kind of towards the end of our live stream, but I guess to answer your question quickly before we get to it is that Lynn has told us that she hasn't actually tried a Jordan Series drogue yet.
But she'll get into that in a video.
She'll get into it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think I was cut off when I was saying, but earlier, just a question for you guys out there. What was your scariest experience in a storm, and why do you think it was scary?
Gotcha. Okay.
All right, so you want to go to question number 2 and see if there's any comments that we missed?
Yeah.
All right, so when you first started cruising, what did you imagine being at sea in a storm would feel like, and how did that change after your first storm? After sailing for so many years, how do you now feel about experiencing severe weather at sea?
All right, let's see what she has to say.
Larry had quite a bit of sailing.
Get better here in a second.
Yeah, we were experimenting with places today. We usually do our live streams in this like kind of dull room, but that's very controlled. But we thought it'd be more fun to be outside because we're in the Caribbean and it's beautiful, but the internet is in and out right now.
Yeah. So we'll do this one more time and then see if we're gonna have to move, which may just be what we have to do. Okay, we'll try and do question number 2. Again, if you want to ask one more time.
Sure.
And then
Okay, when you first started cruising, what did you imagine being at sea in a storm would feel like, and how did that change after your first storm? After sailing for so many years, how do you now feel about experiencing severe weather while you're sailing?
We've always relied on heat. It's worked really well for us. The amazing thing about it is how it does seem to create a slick and calms the waters to windward, so that although the seas don't lay down, the breaking crests don't happen right next to the boat. It's if you look at our Storm Tactics DVD, it actually shows what a slick looks like. When we were crossing the North Pacific in our little boat, Seraphim, 24-footer, we experienced 7 severe storms, the tail of a cyclone. Larry got bored with laying hove to and decided to try other methods. We let the boat lie ahull during one storm, and we were swept by a sea, damaged the boat. Larry got her hove to, and it was as if we'd turned the wind off. It's amazing the difference. We've done in other situations, we've run before storms for a little bit too long in one case. And the problem with running before storms is you have to steer the boat and keep it lined up perfectly with any of the waves that are coming under your stern, have to be at an angle, coming down the face of them. We actually ended up tipped upside down, quite a bit of damage to the boat. The minute we think of shortening sail down beyond the full staysail, we heave to. We would never run under bare poles, and that's all explained quite well in our Storm Tactics Handbook, how we feel about that. If you've got a big, strong crew who can keep steering through 24, 48 hours of storm, it might be a tactic I'd consider, but I'd also wonder about, do I want water washing through the cockpit? Are my washboards and companionway watertight enough to handle that? So that's why I've answered your question number 4, why we would avoid running. Race crews usually are trained to handle running conditions in storms. And the general consensus is 25 to 30 minutes on the helm and storm force winds. That's all a helmsman can handle. So short-handed doesn't work well.
All right, so, and again, I think that the internet is getting a little bit better, so that's good. You want to scroll down there, but, all right, so, like, I did want to just mention, like, you know, again, in our first situation, dealing with, like, kind of what seemed to us to be extreme weather on the boat, it is terrifying when you first start out. And let me just clarify, we haven't been in any serious storms, but we were off the, you know, we were approaching the dry Tortugas and we're getting around 30 knots of wind. And it was the very first time that we had done that in a small sailing vessel. Like, we had both worked on bigger boats, but never in a small sailing vessel. And so we had the most absurd fears. Like, I remember trying to sleep down below and hearing the sounds of the water rushing by along the hull, and just like feeling the boat just pulling one of those like whoosh, when it starts to really like kind of push its hull speed a little bit. And just the sounds and the feeling and the vibration and the way the boat was moving and everything, like it was kind of terrifying. And again, coming back to that concept of like, it's because you're out there and you're by yourself, and you know, there's no one else to rely on. So the beginning stages for us have been, you know, particularly like the anxiety is the worst.
Yeah.
But we're slowly gaining more confidence. Slowly over time, we now like being in situations like that, we're not so worried about it. You know, shoot, at the very beginning of us sailing, I was worried that the mast was just going to come down in like normal conditions. You know what I mean? So we've just been slowly gaining more and more confidence with the boat. And what Lin is saying, like, eventually that confidence appears, not like we know, but it would seem that it even extends to quite extreme scenarios like she's been through. So to us, that seems to be the name of the game, is just slowly putting yourselves into situations so that you can gain that confidence.
And someone was asking if Storm Tactics is on Audible, and I think Lin said that it's not, but they do have a really great video about Storm Tactics, which you can get on her website, or the sailing channel. What is it again? Dave has the link. But you
Boat Galley?
No, the sailingchannel.tv. But anyways, you can find it on her website. It's a really awesome video. We've watched it like 10 times. All right, and so yeah, I guess I would say, you know, on that topic of like anticipating how bad it's going to be before you're actually in a storm, like, and how important it is to actually get out there and practice. Oh, we're not live, huh?
Yeah, I don't
Gosh,
think so.
Let's just go.
Yeah. All right, let's just try that little table up there real quick. Here, I'll go up there and just kind of, and then of course here we come right back.
Oh, we are in and out. This is so sad.
Yeah.
Anyways, what I was going to say is that, so like when we were talking about the anticipation and the fear, I remember in my first, one of our first big storms, I was so kind of like freaked out by like the feeling of the wind, and I was wearing my glasses because Jordan was on watch, but he needed my help, and I didn't have time to put my contacts in, and like there was salt water on my glasses, and you could just feel the boat like moving around, and it was just crazy. And it got to the point where I had like a panic attack, and Jordan was telling me to do something very simple, like pull in the main sheet, and I could not understand what he was saying. I was like, I just like froze. And so he said, okay, that line to your right, put your hands around it and pull. And I was like, okay. So, you know, it made me realize that it's really important to practice, because I imagine the more we practice and get out there, if we see a storm, get out there and like practice our storm tactics, those kinds of situations won't happen again. And I've definitely relied a lot on Jordan in these situations, but the more we've had those experiences, the more I've been more empowered to just like kind of you know, educate myself and practice more and have more personal responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, that's something that we really need to spend more time on is not just trying to accomplish our passage or accomplish our immediate sailing goal, but to do it putting Desiree into the positions where she's not comfortable yet, you know? So that's something that we really realized recently we got to start focusing.
And someone was asking if our sea wind heaves too well, and that's a good question. I'll let Jordan take it.
It is a good question, and I haven't figured out the perfect trick to it yet. I'm still kind of working the kinks out of it. We haven't done it in heavy weather yet. We've done it in like mild, moderate weather. So, but let's talk about it a little bit later. While we've got good internet, let's get our next.
Question number 3.
question.
What are your favorite tactics that you've used to stay safe in severe storms at sea? Are there any storm tactics that you have employed that you would not recommend, and why? This is a great answer.
Yeah, here we go.
Hey guys, it's Brad and Krista.
That is not Lin Pardey.
That is not Lin Pardey. Hold on.
We've always relied on heaving to. It's worked really well for us. The amazing thing about it is how it does seem to create a slick and calms the waters to windward, so that although the seas don't lay down, the breaking crests don't happen right next to the boat. It's if you look at our Storm Tactics DVD, it actually shows what a slick looks like. When we were crossing the North Pacific in our little boat, Seraphin, 24-footer, we experienced 7 severe storms, the tail of a cyclone. Larry got bored with laying hove to and decided to try other methods. We let the boat lie a hull during one storm, and we were swept by a sea, damaged the boat. Larry got her hove to, and it was as if we'd turned the wind off. It's amazing the difference. We've done in other situations, we've run before storms for a little bit too long in one case. And the problem with running before storms is you have to steer the boat and keep it lined up perfectly with any of the waves that are coming under your stern. You have to be at an angle coming down the face of them. We actually ended up tipped upside down, quite a bit of damage to the boat. The minute we think of shortening sail down beyond the full staysail, we heave to. We would never run under bare poles, and that's all explained quite well in our Storm Tactics Handbook, how we feel about that. If you've got a big, strong crew who can keep steering through 24, 48 hours of storm, it might be a tactic I'd consider, but I'd also wonder about, do I want water washing through the cockpit? Are my washboards and companionway watertight enough to handle that? So that's why I've answered your question number 4. Why we would avoid running. Race crews usually are trained to handle running conditions in storms. And the general consensus is 25 to 30 minutes on the helm and storm force winds. That's all a helmsman can handle. So short-handed doesn't work well.
Okay, yeah, and that makes a lot of sense with running before a storm. Particularly, like, I agree with Lynn, and again, this is with so little experience, but just from everything that I've read, it makes a lot of sense that if you're going to present your stern to the seas, that could be problematic, particularly with, you know, a primitive or, you know, a relatively not watertight companionway setup like we have, you know what I mean, that is by no means watertight, and so it'd be difficult to imagine having seas breaking in over that. We did want to mention that in Lynn's video, the Storm Tactics DVD, they do like show what the slick looks like.
It's really cool.
And then in their book, they really go into a good description of exactly how that slick works. And from what we can tell and what we've read, that really is one of the primary reasons why heaving to and then using a para anchor can be such a excellent storm tactic, because you can, when there are breaking waves, you can functionally make the waves stop breaking ahead of you, and so that can really help you out. But yeah.
Yeah, and I've got a question for Lynn. You mentioned in this video that you tipped upside down. How quickly does that happen, and how does that feel? I know you mentioned broaching in your Storm Tactics book, which is a really cool little story, a little bit terrifying. Yeah, what was that like? How did it feel compared to broaching? And then question for you guys out there, do you have any questions for Lin before we move on to our next topic? Also, we were cut off earlier. Somebody was asking about what if our allied sea wind heaves to well or not, and you didn't get to answer that.
Yeah, so it's a trick with a catch, really. Like, and we don't have a staysail as opposed to a cutter, which, in my opinion, like, the staysail is just perfect for that situation. You can get a little bit of sail area forward that you can back, and that'll keep you from tacking. Our issue with Atticus is I haven't found just quite that right balance that keeps the boat close enough to the wind and yet doesn't tack the boat over. You know, Atticus is a pretty sprite little sailboat, and she'll tack on a dime. Like, she'll tack without us even wanting to. And so my issue with Atticus has been, how do we get her to heave to properly without tacking and without a staysail? So maybe this trick would be to get our storm jib up and put it up on the forestay, and then back that. Well, I've still got to try a couple of arrangements to see exactly how she'll lie to the wind, you know, happily.
Yep, and also thank you, Bob Yandel, for your $10 super chat donation.
Hey, Bob!
You're awesome.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers. And
Appreciate
then Lin asked me to repeat my question, which was, in your last video you mentioned tipping upside down. Does that mean you guys turtled? And what was that experience like, and how did it compare to broaching? And kind of like, how quickly did it happen? And
yeah,
also,
because that sounds terrifying.
Yeah, do you describe that in one of your books? I want to read it. Yeah. Do you want to go on to question number 4?
Sure.
Okay.
While Lin, because I would like to see what Lin has to say. But also, Lin, I'm sorry, we don't want to make you, like, type out the whole thing. So just any kind of brief description we would really appreciate.
Yep, and while you're getting to that, we'll go on to our next question for you, which is, we've read that the loads imposed on both the gear and the boat involved in deploying and retrieving a para anchor can be extreme. Have you found this to be true? And if so, do you have any techniques to manage the gear under such extreme loads?
Well, that's an excellent question, Desiree.
Thank
Let's
you.
see what Lin has to say.
There seems to be a lot of worry about something that isn't a problem. Your gear on your foredeck, that's why we like to use the parachute anchor off the bow and angle the boat so that she's held in a hove-to position. The ground tackle exerts more pressure on your boat than a parachute anchor should if it's properly sized. But if you look at our the most recent edition of the Storm Tactics Handbook, we have done quite a bit of research through the years and feel that people are being sold oversized parachute anchors. So we've downsized the recommended size for your boat. We dropped down from using a 15-footer, a 12-footer, excuse me. We had a 12-footer on Taliesin. We found that was actually bigger than it needed to be. An 8-footer did perfectly well. So if your parachute anchor is not oversized, if you are securing your rode to a bollard on the foredeck, or you're using your windlass as a support, it should be more than strong enough. Remember, there's never the full weight of your boat going onto that parachute. Your boat's floating. If you get 5% of the weight of the boat thrown onto that parachute, it's probably a lot. It's just identical to being at anchor in extreme winds.
All right, so that makes a lot of sense, actually. Like, I just recently read an article actually in Cruising World by Fatty Goodlander, who, you know, another awesome author, and he was talking about his experiences using several different storm techniques as well as gear. He was talking about his experiences using para anchors and storm anchors, and just saying that it can be kind of difficult to retrieve. But that makes a lot of sense what Lin is saying about a lot of these para anchors are being oversized, because you could imagine you want the anchor to keep you from drifting back too quickly and from letting a wave push your bow down, but you also don't want the para anchor to act like a real anchor and just keep you perfectly static against all of these massive forces. So that makes a lot of sense. We probably will do another live stream talking about hopefully a lot of the issues that I read about that Fatty was talking about in these other techniques. I'd sure love to have Fatty Goodlander on, but we'll see about that. But again, we're going to be focusing on the techniques that Lin and Larry talk about in their book today.
Yeah, but if you guys have any research, data, or good resources about one tactic versus another, please include them in your comments below so that we can further our research.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then our last question for Lin. Actually, let's make sure we didn't miss any good questions.
Lin says, having crossed oceans on boats ranging from 24 feet to 85 feet as we delivered boats to earn funds, learned a lot about how to handle various types of boats in heavy weather. I'm sorry. And then she said, sorry, Desiree, can you repeat your question? Here it was. She says, it was a broach, ran too long in the Baltic, late autumn, broached, lay in the trough of a very large breaking sea. Boat tried to roll over, but only went to about 165 degrees. And that is enough. Yes.
Yeah. And if you're interested in learning about this, it's on page 63 of the Storm Tactics book. And I was reading it on the edge of my seat, and she just does such a good job of it, describing exactly how it feels. So if you're thinking about getting out there yourself, and you're not close to the ocean yet, read this book.
Yeah, in fact, Desiree was reading it today, and she was like, we need to get a larger manual bilge pump, because we have a manual bilge pump, and then we have two redundant electrical pumps. She's like, we need a bigger manual pump. She read this part out loud to me, and she's just like, Larry says, I'm okay, start pumping. Yeah. And Lin just starts pumping. Like, can you imagine, the boat's just full of water. Lin, oh, that's great writing. No, really, really enjoy reading about your adventures.
Yeah, and very honest, which is appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so let's move on to our fifth question, which is, have you ever used a Jordan series drogue or something similar, and what is your opinion of it?
No, we have not, although we have spoken to many people who do. Just about anything dragged off the bow of your boat will help the boat stay hove to, and it'll stop it and keep it the way you want to lie, which is about 50 degrees off the wind. That you have to put a bridle on it. But if you're using a Jordan series drogue off the stern, once again, you're in a running position. You're putting your stern towards the wind. You're putting that cockpit towards the stern. I'm not comfortable with that. The one problem I've heard with people using this Jordan series drogue is getting it back in is really, really difficult. So I hope I've given you a few answers here. It's a complex problem. I think people worry about storms more than they should.
Oh my God.
No, we have not, although we have spoken to many people who do. Just about anything dragged off the bow of your boat will help the boat stay hove to, and it'll stop it and keep it the way you want to lie, which is about 50 degrees off the wind. That you have to put a bridle on it. But if you're using a Jordan series drogue off the stern, once again, you're in a running position. You're putting your stern towards the wind. You're putting that cockpit towards the stern. I'm not comfortable with that. The one problem I've heard with people using this Jordan series drogue is getting it back in is really, really difficult. So I hope I've given you a few answers here. It's a complex problem. I think people worry about storms more than they should. In all of our sailing, when Larry and I sailed together, 200 and some thousand miles together, we delivered a lot of boats for people. We did sail around all 4 of the great southern capes, so we had stormier weather than the average cruiser would face, and still, we were only in winds above 30 knots, 6% of our voyaging time. And if you just take the deliveries out and take the Cape Horns sort of things out, probably 2% of our time was in winds over 30 knots. And not all of that was storms. And many of it was just uncomfortable sailing. I'm currently sailing on a boat called Sahula with a very lovely gentleman named David Haig. And because Larry's no longer with me, he's in full-time care due to his very advanced dementia. David sailed around the world 11 years, and the first time he was in winds above 35 knots was just a few weeks ago off the coast of New Zealand. So around the world by choosing the best seasons. So, but on the other hand, you do still have to prepare for that time when a storm catches you out. So get out sailing as much as you can, and when the winds are blowing up, instead of heading back into port, turn around, go to windward into that wind, and practice using that storm trysail. Practice reefing your sails. The more often you go out into winds that are heavier, the less strong winds will concern you. So fair winds, and hope you have some good sailing.
Wow, Lynn, thank you so much for being a part of the live stream today. We sincerely really appreciate it. It's literally like a dream come true for me. But you know, I thought that was what Lynn had to say there at the end seemed to be really interesting. I mean, I had read about her statistics for storm conditions throughout their career and how relatively low it was. But then talking about her friend at the end there, sailing 11 years, doing a circumnavigation, and he just at the end of like his sailing career, not the end, but I mean like just recently in his sailing career, has he experienced 35 knots and above. I mean, that really does go to show you that if your goal is to avoid serious winds and sort of extreme conditions, you probably could do a decent job of doing it. Obviously, like a lot of people are not so put off by it, and so they get out there in areas and time periods that are a little more volatile, and so you may see more of it. But what Lynn was saying is a really good point, that it's less of a big deal than most people seem to make it out to be. So.
And now, since the tools that we have available as cruisers have become more readily available with like the apps on the App Store, and just like there's so much technology going into cruising right now that your weather forecasting can be a lot more accurate. So that's a really, if you really want to avoid storms, and that's your kind of MO, with the technology that's been changing recently, you can almost do it. But that being said, it is very important to practice and get your tactics right.
And we gotta say goodbye to Lynn. She's gotta go. She was telling us before we started that and she's saying now she's got a barge arriving to lift 2 boats into their boatyard. So Lynn, thank you so much. It truly was an honor to have you on, and I just gotta tell you, you have inspired me more than I could say, and I think that that's true for a lot of people. Yeah. So thank you, and Larry as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. You're amazing.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. Yeah.
And someone was asking, and actually before Lynn leaves, if you guys haven't had enough Lin Pardey yet, definitely check out her website, which we've linked to in the description below. She's got DVDs, books, and she also just started a new podcast with the Boat Galley. So her next week's topic is going to be working while sailing, which is very relevant to us and probably a lot of you out there who are on a budget like we are. So definitely check that out. She's so good at portraying the lifestyle in an honest and entertaining way. So check that out. All right, so I wanted to address a question from Pale Blue Dot Citizen.
First of all, awesome name.
Yes.
Awesome.
I don't know if you know, but Jordan's obsessed with Carl Sagan.
Love Carl Sagan.
I'm on the brink. I wouldn't say I'm obsessed, but he's the man. No, texting Atticus to 43506 does not result in charges for you, as far as I'm concerned. We take on all of the financial side of that transaction. And then we had another really good question by Wardell. He asks, before cutting the lines, did you guys go to your family doctor and get physicals and to a dentist to make sure all was in order before heading out? I know medical is inexpensive once out of US. And if we had more money before we left, we probably would have done that, but we were like cutting it pretty close financially, so we didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
And once we've gotten to Cancun, it's actually like a hub for medical tourism. So what we've learned is that while we're cruising, we'll try to kind of intersperse medical tourism destinations into our sailing plan to take care of our health. Of course, for emergencies, we'll just have to play it by ear. But as far as Cancun goes, there's dentists all over the place. There's cancer specialists.
It's
Jordan went
very
to see,
cheap.
Yeah, Jordan went to see a kidney specialist. So
Urologist.
we've had a couple of like weird medical issues over the last year, but we've handled them pretty cheaply. Each consultation is never more than $50 US, and you have top of the line gear and X-rays and MRIs.
And
so
you
it's
don't
kind
need
of crazy.
and you don't need references, which is huge, right? Like you can just say, you know, I think I have a kidney problem. I'm going to see a urologist. And you go there and they say, you need this and that. Go downstairs and get. I mean, it's very quick and it's very cheap. So for anybody worried about medical issues, I guess if you need some sort of very delicate and advanced surgery or something like that, it'd be good to be in the States. But otherwise, for just your nuts and bolts sort of medical issues, there's a handful of medical tourism areas in the Caribbean, Cancun being a huge one, and like Cartagena, I've heard in Colombia is a really big one, and I'm sure there's more. So yeah, that is a really good option, is just sort of go insurance less and realize that you can get pretty affordable healthcare.
Yep.
In other
And
places.
along those lines, a long time ago, Ann Aberdeen, one of our patrons and loyal subscribers, asked the question, which is, how do you leave your own country that long? What do you do about income tax? Do you lose your health care once you've been gone for so long? Is somebody on the mainland that looks after all of your paperwork? How do you do your mail? Do you have like satellite communication with people while you're out sailing? And that's kind of all along the same vein about, you know, just kind of staying safe and healthy while you're sailing. And yes, to answer her question about healthcare, we don't have healthcare. We just pay as we go. As far as income tax, we're kind of also figuring that out as we go. So if you're a tax expert and want to work with us, let us know. We do have our family at home that we use as kind of like our main address. When people ask to ship us things, we ship it to my mom in Florida. And then the next time she comes and visits, or Jordan's parents come to visit, we have them bring the stuff to us. And then there's also a lot of concierge services that you can get as you're sailing around the world. In Cancun, there's a FedEx delivery center. There's a UPS center as well, and DHL. So it is possible. So yeah, hope that answers your question.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, do you want to do the Atticus chug?
Yeah, let's do some Atticus chugs. We skipped
Let's do the Atticus chug. Yeah, sorry guys, we with the internet issues, we wanted to hold on.
Let's start off with the comment of the week, and this was Johnson, Wisconsin. He says, "I'm totally going to sail. I don't care if it's in an inner tube while holding a bed sheet. One way or another, I have to find a way to sail, and you will."
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Johnson, Wisconsin.
Here's to you.
Here's to you, amigo. Cheers. Get out there and do it, brother.
Also wanted to give a shout out to all of our new patrons. We have a lot this month, which is really exciting.
Holy moly. Okay, I'll take the first line.
Okay.
Eric Rodden, who I really like a lot of your comments on our Facebook and everything. Sean Rohn, Rod Halpert, Hans Eater, who I know has a lot of interesting stuff to say. We really enjoy your messages.
Elizabeth Miller, Derek, Captain Fish, Doug Brambrick,
Mark Kruger, John Sutton, Jeffrey L. Thomas Jr., who is now a producer, and Andrew Compton.
So thank you guys. Cheers to you.
Cheers, amigos. All right. Oh, and we got Sailing Rainbow, first of all. Just
you guys are awesome.
gave us $10. Really enjoying this topic. Great seeing a sailing hero and have a beer on us. Cheers. Right? Wasn't it so awesome to have Lin? I can't wait to do this again with better internet. I'm so bummed that happened.
Oh
well, you know.
And now it's perfect. Ugh.
And then we got Steve O. Howe, which I like the
Nice.
name. San Diego Steve O. And have a few beers on
Aw,
me. Thank
nice.
you.
Thank you.
And then Farrah C's as well. Thank you very much,
Thank you
guys.
very
We
much.
really appreciate
You
it.
guys are all amazing.
And guys, we do just want to say that this whole super chat thing, as well as PayPal, you know, I'll make this as brief as I can, but we don't do anything with Patreon for these live streams. We do it pro bono. It takes us about a day to put these together. So if you really enjoy these and you really want to inspire us and push us to do more of them, this is a great way to help us out, is Super Chat and PayPal.
Yep.
So we really appreciate it.
Your love goes a long way.
To all of our patrons, you know, you guys are, I've said this before, I'll say it again, you guys are literally changing our lives, and on a daily basis, like, you know, our entire world is getting turned upside down because you guys are starting to get to do what we're really passionate about more and more often, so we appreciate it.
Yep, and then also wanted to give a moment of clarity, or I don't know, you can do it, to Jeffrey Thomas, one of our newest patrons and producers, and he was just saying that, you know, he's landlocked in Ohio. He's a truck driver, and the people around him think he's crazy for wanting to live on a boat and see the world. And we just wanted to reassure you that once you get your boat and get out there, you're going to be surrounded by like-minded people, and you're never going to look back, and it's going to be amazing, and you're not crazy, and you're going to do it, and you're amazing.
You can do it, bro. Keep
Yes.
trucking.
Yes.
You could totally do it.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so that's all for our Atticus chugs. Let's say Mark Starbuck says, watched your video on hot crime spots in the Caribbean today. You said that in some areas you have to be more careful. What do you do specifically? I guess for me, like, I don't flaunt jewelry. We don't kind of, if we're out, we don't leave our camera gear or anything out and flashy. We don't like get super drunk at night and go wandering around downtown. Basically, if you stay away from like the big cities at night while being intoxicated, you're pretty much going to avoid a lot of big problems.
Yeah. I mean, I would almost break that down into two different aspects. Like, what do you do about your stuff on the boat? And then what do you do personally when you're ashore?
Right.
And yeah, when you're ashore, like a big thing is just don't be obviously drunk, because in my experience traveling around the Caribbean, even when we used to work on boats and stuff, on big boats, like most of the people I knew that got mugged and whatnot were belligerently drunk. So you can reduce your risk factor dramatically by at least appearing like you're not drunk at the very least. It's like being really cautious about that. And then with the boat, you should, you know, definitely watch that episode. You know, we talked about the whole outrunning a bear concept. And to me, with petty theft, that's the tactic, right?
Yeah, just
like,
make it difficult.
Make it harder to steal your stuff than it is to steal the guy's stuff next to you. I mean, like, it's terrible, but it'll work,
Yeah.
right? So
like raise your dinghy at night, or chain your dinghy at night, or make, you know, impediments like a spotlight or a what do you call it? A motion sensor for sound, an alarm, whatever it takes to make it unappealing to steal your stuff. Delos has a good video on that. Yeah.
Do we have any other things about storm tactics though, or do we want to like share?
Yeah. Do you guys have any questions about storm tactics before we go to other questions? I will answer one question while you guys are typing away.
Because I'd also like to just describe our one situation off of Fort Jefferson.
Okay. Well, let me just get to this.
Sure.
Question.
Okay. So, but in a second, we will get back to the topic of storm tactics.
Yeah. So Sailing SV Someday asks, off subject, did you buy your Sailrite new or find a sold used one? And I bought it new. Sailrite is one of our sponsors, so they actually sent me a free sewing machine in exchange for posting videos about my learning experience. And if we had bought the sewing machine, I think it cost $800. And it would have been an amazing investment because I've made way more than $800 with all the sewing jobs that I've done for other people. So even if we didn't have sponsorship from Sailrite, I definitely would have bought that Sailrite. It's amazing.
Yeah. And then real quick, I'm breaking my own rule. I was going to get back on topic, but Wardell Junius, I'm sorry, I'm probably butchering the name. Apologize, buddy. Says, did you see the movie preview for Adrift? Dealing with Storm for sure. Adrift is a super badass book. So I really wonder if the movie...
Adrift is it's like about a couple.
Ew.
Yeah.
So what was the one with the guy from Jurassic Park where they're like, I can't remember. Anyway, sorry. So Wardell, I have not seen the preview. I'd be interested to check it out.
But if you guys haven't read the book Adrift, it's amazing.
Is awesome. It's a true story written by the guy that experienced it, and it was him like living in a life raft. I think he still has the longest record for living on a life raft by yourself out of necessity. And he was like spearing, he happened to have a spear gun with him, and that's why he was so successful, and blah blah blah. Really awesome book.
Yeah, probably my favorite cruising book.
Yeah. But just to sort of stay on topic a little bit, ask any questions that you guys have about storm tactics. Comment about what Lin was talking about. Give us your suggestions, your feedback, your ideas. I'm just going to really briefly describe the one situation that we got into on Atticus so far that was a little bit hairy. So we were sailing down from Sarasota, Florida, to the Dry Tortugas on our way to Cuba. And as we were just getting into really the 24 hours before we got to Fort Jefferson, to the Dry Tortugas, was really blustery. And essentially this cold front was meant to pass through faster than it ended up passing through. And so we thought we were going to kind of ride the coattails, and we ended up riding the bull, if you will. And so so we had some pretty strong winds, all downwind. We were running under our 100% jib, so our working jib alone, and the boat was pushing hull speed. You know what I mean, like going over 7 knots, which is getting to that point with our boat, as heavy as she is. It's a little bit unsafe and not what you want. So anyway, it was already pretty rough. We did heave to kill some time so that we could have a daylight arrival. But then upon arrival, and see, this is a learning experience for me. I didn't put the pieces together in my mind when I was planning this, but when you get near Fort Jefferson and the Dry Tortugas, you get into a shoaled area. And so that shoal, it's shallower than the sea around it, causes the waves to kind of rise up, right? Because their waves are coming from deeper water, they hit the shallower water, and they kind of rise up. And so approaching Fort Jefferson, we were getting some really just nasty shaped waves, right? They were just kind of tall and almost like squarish, and again, it was only about 30 knots of wind, so like not anything life-threatening, but boy was it eye-opening, I guess I would say, because we had to kind of round up to I would call it a close reach, and just being a little bit on the wind with waves of that nature was very, just rough for us. And so I know Desiree was like very concerned at the time.
That was the day I lost the plot.
Yeah, she was very, very concerned at the time.
And I think like that's what's cool about Lin's book. Like she really describes the emotional experience, and like, there are little things that impact your perspective. So for me, it was like a series of little things that made everything seem like really, really scary. And I know it sounds stupid, but the fact that I was wearing like my glasses and I didn't have my contacts on made everything seem like in slow motion and distant and like out of my control, and I couldn't actually see because the salt water was getting on my glasses.
Yeah, you were just like constantly in this like mist of spray.
Yeah, and
right?
It was also my first big storm, and so it's hard to explain what it actually feels like.
Yeah, and see, and that's something that we are hoping to capture with these live streams and with the YouTube channel in general. Like, we don't know a lot about cruising. We're learning a lot, and we're trying to learn as fast as we can. But what we can express is that feeling that you experience when you don't know what to expect, and you actually don't know that everything's gonna be okay, right? And like that experience of your first sort of extreme-ish situation is terrifying.
Yeah.
And to any of you guys or girls who are like trying to have this dream and want to start doing this, like, my only advice is like, you're going to go through a period where it's just terrifying, And my experience has been like, just try to get sleep, right? Because I've been so like worked up, not terrified, but worked up about the responsibility of keeping Desiree safe and keeping the boat safe, and like, you know, it makes you want to not stop. But you're no good if you haven't slept, right?
Yeah.
And so you gotta just force yourself to stick to that like 4 on 4 off watch schedule.
And I will
whatever.
also say for people who are considering cruising, it's pretty much, in our experience, only the first time that was like really terrifying. And like after that it gets better, because when we hit another storm that was similar storm force or wind speeds and everything, I knew what it felt like, so I wasn't terrified. I was like, oh, okay, Atticus can handle this. Like, good job, Atticus. So it's, for me, it was just that the first time was like was very nerve-wracking, but it gets better, and then the more you practice, the less scary it is. And when, like Lynn said, when you see a storm on the horizon that looks manageable, like, get out there and practice more. And that's the only way to conquer your fears, is just to get out there and kind of like increasingly raise your tolerance level.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's such a good point.
Yeah. So Darrell Jones says, what are your sailing plans in the near future? How much of your planning is impacted by conservative analysis of weather and storm patterns? And that goes along with Salty Fingers' questions, which is, do you plan to cross the Atlantic?
Okay.
So we don't plan to cross the Atlantic right now. Our what do you call it? Sail plans for the next couple of months are really to explore the Caribbean.
The Caribbean.
The Caribbean. Yeah, the Caribbean.
Real quick on that topic, let's get a beer count, guys, girls. How many beers deep are you? Wine glasses, whatever. Let's hear it. I think I'm on number 4. Desiree?
I'm on 3.
3. There you go. Nice and modest. So, go on.
Yes, so we plan to explore the Caribbean. We actually, should we reveal what we found yesterday?
I wonder if we still have a map. No.
We shouldn't?
What? Oh, yeah, go for it.
So this is probably a spoiler alert, but we've been planning to get out of Isla Mujeres and like by May, and it is May 8th currently, and we are not out of Isla Mujeres, but we were very close. We made a list of things we needed to do to get out of here. Last night, after we had checked off almost everything on our list, Jordan was working out, happened to be looking at our mizzen mast step, and found a crack in the aluminum mast. And so that is going to change our plans, hopefully not by more than a month.
Yeah, and I'll just describe exactly what I saw. So the extrusion, you know, the actual, you know, mast itself meets the mast base, and right there where the mast meets the mast base, there's like a 2.5 inch long crack. It's obviously due to corrosion occurring between the mast and then the inside sleeve of the mast base. There's corrosion occurring there, and it's creating pressure, and it cracked the mast. So we have a couple of options, and to try to not go too deep into it, you know, we're going to be here for a couple more weeks than we anticipated. So super bummer. But before I go more on to, with our what's the phrase I'm looking for? With our, like, before we cry more about our situation, let's talk about how many beers people have had. So Dan Marshall says he's on 4. Steve O'House is number 5. That's a winner so far. Oh no, Sailing Vessel 13 Winds is on 6. Wow. You are now the winner.
You're the beer champion.
Nice one. You're the champion. And then Marty Hanley says 2, but they are 25 ounces, so 4 of yours. Okay, fair enough. No, that is a good point. You got to take that into consideration. Well, cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers. And thanks a lot for joining us. This has been a blast so far.
I've got one more question. Well, also, Todd Boldy was saying he highly recommends Heavy Weather Sailing by Kay Adlard Coles, and that is true. We borrowed that from our friends, and it is a great read.
Super awesome book. No, I highly recommend that as well. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then another question from one of our followers, Jeffrey Thomas, who is our newest patron, says, so is your boat a catch, and is your boat full keel, and how fast does Atticus sail? I really want a full keel, but I'm worried I might be way too slow. Would be interested in your feedback. And then Kevin on YouTube asked, I would like to have a catch. Knowing what you know now, would you go with a catch or something different? And this is a question we get a lot, so I'll let you take this over.
Yeah, absolutely. So, gosh, okay, so here's sort of how I feel in the situation. If you're on a really tight budget, I think that old full keel boats are your best option. If you're on a tight budget, like, you gotta understand, like, the, you know, tight, like we're tight, like, I mean, seriously tight, because you can pick some of those boats up for a song, you know what I mean? And you can pick up, like, a really, like, our boat, an Allied Seawind 30 from, like, the 60s or 70s, that's, like, that people have, like, taken care of and have all the newest stuff on it. You can pick those up for, like, $40,000 to $45,000, right? Like, I'm sure they're not turnkey ready to go, but still, like, they've got to be. I'm sure you could find one really close for about that much money. I mean, that's nothing to just grab a boat that can just start cruising, you know, and that you wouldn't feel bad about taking offshore. Whereas you start looking at more modern boat designs and hulls, and you've got to have a. What's up, Drogon? Okay, sorry, we got to show you. We got. This is the guy that. Partial owner of the bar and manages the bar, our good friend Dan. This is his dog. Oh,
Drogon.
No, Drogon. Yeah. Okay, that's enough. That's enough of the limelight. That's it. That's it for you. But oh god, now I smell like Drogon.
Yeah.
Anyway, but so if you're dealing with a budget that's you know, a moderate budget, I would say, then you could definitely start to consider, gosh, what was the word that I was trying to remember earlier today? It's not composite. That's the, guys, you guys can help me out. The hull design where you've got a modified. Thank you. Modified keel, where you don't have a full fin keel, you've got like a substantially attached keel that has like a cutaway in the front and in the back, and then you've got a skegged rudder that's highly protected. So those designs, in my opinion, are great too, and they'll be faster. So your question was, how fast is Atticus? Atticus is, you know, our hull speed is 6.5 knots. Top speed isn't a big issue with this whole speed thing. It's mostly how, you know, at what winds do you reach your hull speed or your top speed. And so, yeah, Atticus is definitely a slower boat. We got to put up a lot of canvas in light winds, I'll say that much. You know what I mean? Where if you have a more modern design, you could get away with just your normal, you know, Genoa and your mainsail and whatever, and get going at a pretty good clip. So I'm trying to think, what else was there involved with the question? Do you have the question?
He's talking about hull speed. I'm going to address Sailing Pauhana says, one water here, gotta work tomorrow. Cheers to you. Been there.
I hear you. Yeah.
I think you answered it.
Yeah, so, I mean, that, I get... I'll add on to this much. If I could do it again, not do it again, I'm sorry. Our next boat will probably be about a 36-foot cutter. And I'd probably go with, you know, I'd be happy with like a full keel with a good cutaway. I'd also be happy with a modified keel. I'd be happy with either or. But again, like, if you're looking to save money, man, full keel is just the best way to go, because those boats are so out of fashion. They're not, this is the best way to put it, they're not, people aren't selling them for what they're worth, period. Not even close. So I recommend it.
And Darrell Jones says, what do you describe in the mast step will not cause a compression failure? Oh, what you describe in the mast step will not cause a compression failure. So you can wait to address that if you wanted to wait until another time when you're already planning to haul out. Yeah, and that's been something we're thinking about, and maybe emotionally, because we're doing the live, we've been prepping for this live stream with Lin Pardey and Storm Tactics. Storm Tactics. I'm kind of like, we want both masts that we can trust, no matter what, in case the craziest system comes our way. So.
I mean, that said, Daryl, I'd love to talk to you about this after, you know, in the next day or two or whatever, because yeah, we are going to be island hopping period. But it's not like Cuba's got a car that'll come tow you, right? Like if that thing falls down in Cuba, well, it wouldn't be the end of the world if we lost the mizzen mast. We'd probably be able to get it back on board. But I mean, it would be a bad day.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
the damage it could cause by...
It could sure screw up one of our legs, that's for sure.
Everything on the boat, you know? It's a lot of weight.
Yeah, so anyway, but Daryl, I'd be really interested talking about that, because you're right, like at a certain point, and we talked to a representative from U.S. Spars today, which is the U.S. Side of Z Spars, and they were saying if you're going offshore, you really shouldn't try and band-aid it. You should try to like at least get a sleeve in there, or what we're considering now.
4 options.
Yeah, 4 options. But my favorite option right now is to cut the 2.5, 3 inches of the bottom of the mast that is affected, and then have a new mast base fabricated, and then just make a new mast step that is 2 inches or 3 inches taller. And then install the whole assembly so that we don't have to adjust anything. I'm kind of leaning towards that.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear what you guys think.
Yeah, and Ross Jenkins says, I might be a nerd, but safety is more important than speed. And that's true. That's the boat triangle. You have to compromise between seaworthiness, comfort, and speed. And Atticus is optimized for seaworthiness.
If you're a nerd, Lin and Larry Pardey are nerds, right? Like they... I'm sorry. I just interrupted Desiree. Where's the spray bottle? Do it. Spray me. Ugh. Yeah. Gotcha. Ooh, that was nice. But anyway, no. So don't. I wouldn't worry about that. I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. I mean, to a certain extent, I've talked about. Let's see if I still. Nope, I don't. But I've talked about how like the big compromise with boats, right, is seaworthiness, speed, and then comfort. And Atticus is designed to optimize seaworthiness. It does decent with speed, and then the comfort is just totally compromised.
Seems like we're in and out of connection again. Are we live?
Maybe. Hard to say. All right, can you guys hear us? Are we there? This is implying that we're doing all right.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, well, if you guys have enjoyed tonight's live stream and you don't want to miss another one in the future, go ahead and text Atticus to 43506. And if you've enjoyed tonight's live stream, please give us a thumbs up. It really helps a lot. Finally, thank you so much to Lin Pardey for joining us tonight. We're so sorry for the internet glitches. This is so sad because we've debated for so many hours if we should do the controlled environment, which is kind of sterile, versus a fun Caribbean environment, and now I'm kind of thinking we should have just gone with the safe option. So never take risks.
And there's Drogon. Look at that stallion back there.
Yeah.
And so, also, are you gonna talk about the Patreon hangout?
Real quick though, if you want more of Lin Pardey, definitely check out her website, which we've linked to below. You can check out her DVDs, her podcasts, her books. Her website has a lot of resources. If you're figuring out how to cruise, why not learn from seasoned cruisers? Absolutely.
And then also, guys, if you guys would like to support the entire Project Atticus effort, I mean, we're talking about doing a podcast coming up, which we're really excited about. We've got these live streams, we've got the normal episodes on YouTube. If you want to support what we're doing, if you think what we're doing is great and you want to make sure that we get to keep on doing it, then you can consider becoming a patron. Becoming a patron, you get to get a handful of behind the scenes access, and one of the biggest benefits is the Facebook Patreon Hangout, where we kind of give patrons the reins a little bit and bring up a lot of our decision-making process, and just bring up a whole lot of things that you wouldn't get to see otherwise. So consider doing that. And to our patrons that are already out there, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Like I said, you guys are changing our lives, and it means the world to us. We're actually getting to do what we love, which is spread the message, tell people what we're learning, and get to share this story with you guys, which is so exciting to us. So.
Yep, and thank you so much, Dave, tonight. You've been an amazing moderator. I don't know what we would do without you. Sailing SB Someday, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much.
Cheers, guys. Absolutely.
Really excited to continue following your adventure. You guys are kicking butt out there. Yeah, so also make sure to check out this week's episode. We are going to be talking about sailing and exploring some more in the Yucatan, and then we experience some engine problems again in Paradise. So see what happens.
That's right. And then next week, the week after this Thursday, a week from Thursday,
yes,
we are doing our Battle of the Channels episode. It's going to be Project Atticus versus Sailing Uma, and only one will survive. Very excited.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. There can only be one.
Yes. So thank you so much, guys, for joining us tonight.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry.
So
Had to do it.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we hope to catch you on another live stream in the future. And let us know if you have any topics that you want us to talk about. We would be glad to do that.
All right. And guys, there's so many shout outs I'd like to make, but there's just too many to even mention. Gosh, Sailing Pawana.
There you go.
Thank you very much, guys. Love your comments.
Salty Fingers.
Yeah, Sailing Oriya Complete Refit. Hi. Good to see you here, buddy. And Steve O. Howe, I really enjoyed all of your comments today. He says, 3 amigos, which are performing on the beach this evening. Say hello for me, Steve O. from San Diego. All right, man. I used to live in Ocean Beach, so I wonder where you lived. I'm sure it was pretty close. And then Salty Fingers talks about motion and comfort. And then I did want to mention one person was saying, and this is interesting, David W. says speed equals safety. And that would be a great topic for us to cover at one point. That's very true in the sense that if you can outrun a system, if you can get around a system, that is safe. And so that is 100% true. And so that would be a fun discussion to talk about.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The varying strategies involving those two methods, whether you want a tank or whether you want a nimble, fast-paced boat. Exactly.
Yeah. Although I will say the weather forecasting usually is pretty accurate up to 3 days, so if you can at least be 3 days ahead of your weather forecast, even on a boat like Atticus, most likely you can get out of the way of harm's reach.
Yeah. Well,
even on a slow boat.
But absolutely, but still, speed can be huge, especially if you're doing like an ocean crossing or something. So something to talk about. You're absolutely right. In our opinion, in our very uneducated, well, not uneducated, our inexperienced opinion. All right, guys. Well, that's probably got to be it. Sailing Oriya Complete Refit says got to get that hardtop built. We've got some surprises to show you. We've made some progress with that, so we haven't released any of it, but we're looking forward to it. Okay, well,
cheers, guys. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and thanks, Lin, for being an awesome inspiration to people like us.
Yeah.
And I feel like she was one of the first people in the world, which is crazy, to express what it's like to sail and cruise in written form. And I think this new generation is moving towards YouTube, and it's kind of interesting to
some of us still write about it.
Yeah, and it's fun to just interact with someone who has done it and who has learned all the lessons, and she's very wise. And if you're thinking about it at all, definitely check out all of her life's work, because it is honest and informative and in our case, life-changing.
Absolutely. I mean, just imagine, we got into this with that confidence of knowing for a fact that all of these other people had done it successfully. You look at them and they had a handful of people that they knew about, like the Hiscocks, and I can't even imagine taking that leap with the amount of information they had at their hands. So anyway, I shouldn't ramble anymore. Let's do a cheers to Lin, because
cheers to Lin.
And Larry, because that was you got the
sorry.
But seriously, guys, let's all cheers, because they are the king and queen, man. Like that's it. They're the best that there is. So, all right, you ready?
Yeah.
Cheers, guys.